What is up, Facebook land? Thank you for tuning in to the second episode of Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. And before I get to my special guest, I want to first say Happy Veterans Day to everyone who has served and continues to serve this great nation. We live in the single greatest experiment that ever came true, the United States. America is the greatest place on earth to live. I've been all over the world, and I can tell you that this is without a doubt the greatest place that we could ever live. Secondly, if anybody's interested in actually listening to the podcast as an audio, you can do so on iTunes, on Spotify, on Anchor, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Castbook, Castbox, Overcast, and Radio Public. So anywhere you listen to a podcast, you can probably find Two Dates and a Dash podcast. Before I introduce Vince, I want to give you a little bit of a history on him. First and foremost, he's a Delaware County Prospect Park boy. So anybody that right now is singing in their head, Delco, you know what I'm talking about.
Glenn Olden.
Glenn Olden, that general vicinity. He's married to his beautiful wife, Janet. They have two children. His oldest is Gabby. She is a graduate of Syracuse University, and she's now working for the Sixers. And his son, Vinny, is a wide receiver senior at the University of Delaware. Vince, as we all know, is an icon in Philadelphia. He played for the Eagles from 76 through 78. 79, he unfortunately got an injury, which put an end to his playing career. But that's not even the most exciting part about Vince. It's what he's done since playing that I find completely inspiring, and why he was asked to be a guest on the show today. Obviously, we all know the Disney movie in 2006, Invincible, where the legendary Mark Wahlberg played Vince. Perfect role casting for that, by the way. He's an inspirational speaker. He's an activist. He's a charitable guy. He's a cancer survivor, and he's an author. And we're going to cover a bunch of stuff today, and I can't wait for you guys to hear everything that Vince got to say. So without further ado, my man, Vince Papale. Welcome, brother.
It's great to be here, Matt. Thanks very much. I told you right before we went on, I'm texting Janet, right? And I'm saying, hey, Jan, do me a favor. Don't call me. I'm going on the podcast.
And then she calls.
Yeah, she's calling. Yeah, she's down in Florida. Yeah, I'm batching tonight. But thanks so much, man. This is so cool. This is like my maiden voyage in this live Facebook stuff. So, and I'm watching the screen, and all these people's faces are popping up. Hey, out there, what's up? It's good.
Yeah, we got lots of people chiming in, brother. When they heard it was going to be you.
I don't know. Awesome. Well, welcome to my house in Cherry Hill, and I wish I could spin the computer around. It's a little bit too big to do that, but this is my home office in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, where I've been for the last 22 years. Pretty cool. I went to the dark side. I like the land of higher taxes. So here we are.
Well, it is the Imperial Republic of New Jersey. So. So what have you been doing this past couple weeks or so? What's been on your plate lately?
Oh man, well, more than anything, it's trying to be a good father and chasing Vinny. As you mentioned, our son Vinny, my son Vinny, is a senior wide receiver student athlete at the University of Delaware. So I've had the opportunity to go watch him play. So I've been doing that. He's been playing every Saturday. I just we will mention I'm an author. I have a new book out called The Last Laugh, and maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that. So. Dennis Franks and the author, my co-author, Denny Franks, and best friend and godfather of my children, all that stuff. We went up to New York for what they call Publicity Summit, and I know you're auditioning for TED Talks. So, excuse me, Matt. So what we did is we auditioned with all kinds of different media, podcasts, TV, radio, writers, whatever it might be. We auditioned our book for them, and we did quite well. So. And I'm getting ready. I'm preparing. I got to have a big speech tomorrow to the Rockwell Automation Group. They're having a convention. There's about 20,000 people coming in town. Wow. So I'm going to be in Philadelphia at the convention center speaking. Be with Sal Powell tomorrow night on the radio. Did a couple of great things today with the Eagles. I did a show with Jordy, the Australian rugby player that the Eagles had signed in their seventh pick, and then I had an opportunity to be with a special forces guy and talk about getting our country back together again, a guy like you. And first of all, first and foremost, before I go any further, thank you very much out there, all you veterans and those who have served, and just can't thank you enough. Appreciate you so much for what you do and keeping the American dream alive. And I know for guys like me and Matt, my kids, my wife, that's what it's all about, isn't it, Matt? It's all about the dream, buddy.
It is, man. It's we're blessed to have the freedoms that we have in this country, and having served in the Army and fought in the Gulf War, and served with some amazing human beings in countries far away. I can tell you that I've never been more happy than to be an American soldier living in America, even in today's climate where things are a little bit tense. I'm confident that we still have the single greatest country in the world.
No, no question about it. And also, serving in law enforcement as well, and something that's so underappreciated, and something that we respect so much in our house. So, it used to be, I remember growing up in Glen Olden, and our police chief was there. We all wanted to grow up and be a cop, wanted to grow up and be a fireman. And, they were the ones that we admired. They were our role models back there, along with the athletes.
Well, you kind of teed me up on my first question, man. I want to talk about what it was like growing up in Delaware County, playing sports, going to St. Joe's, and becoming a teacher of all things. Yeah. And then how that life took you to where you started to make Vince Papale the name, a household name.
Well, the Glen Olden experience. I grew up at South Avenue, McDade Boulevard. They call it Glendale Homes, and we always called it the Project, Cinder Block City. And if you know where the McDade Mall is, it's South Avenue and McDade Boulevard. That's where I grew up, right catty corner to that. Went to Interboro High School. It was very humble beginnings that I came from. My mom, of English descent, a great athlete, actually played pro baseball during the 30s. And my mom, she was one of 9, never got beyond the 8th grade, Matt. And wow. and just a dynamic person, somebody that he was an enabler for the family. My dad grew up in Fallcroft. If you know the Delaware County area, Fallcroft Industrial Park. That's my grandfather's pig farm. And my dad grew up in a 13-acre pig farm. As a kid, they used to take the garbage that you threw out in garbage cans. We didn't have garbage disposals back then, and it would all get dumped at my grandfather's farm with the pigs that smelled really great. Yeah, it didn't smell like honey.
Pigs got well fed though.
Yeah, they did. So at any rate, my dad was a pig farmer, never got beyond the 8th grade. Mom never got beyond the 8th grade, and I grew up in a very humble background. Went to school. Athletics was my thing. And then something tragic happened to me when I was going through puberty. I guess it was about 7th or 8th grade. And my mom had her first nervous breakdown. And then she had another nervous breakdown. And, I'm not ashamed to say it, that she spent several months, maybe a year total, at the Haverford State Mental Hospital, trying to work out whatever was wrong. Back then in the 50s and early 60s, it was taboo to talk about mental illness. Now, it's out there. And but she had ringing of the ear, and that just sort of took her over the top. And you could, there's a lot of different ways you could describe what it was, but what it wasn't good. And as a result, there were a lot of, she was taking the drugs and drinking, and it wasn't pretty at home. And the reason I became a school teacher was because it was the school teachers and the coaches in my life, Matt, that were there for me. Not that my dad wasn't there; he was working at Westinghouse, but it was tough. They were on strike half the time, and he was trying to make a buck. We ran out of insurance with my mom's illness, and it wasn't easy. And there were these people in my life that were so influential in my life, and one in particular, that's George Corner, that stayed by me and gave me that confidence that I needed to get to the next level. Guys like Marty Stern, who was my track coach at Interboro and went on to become a great track coach for the women's teams at Villanova. And, Marty, and it just, I could go from one teacher to the next. And Matt, that's why I went back to Interboro and became a school teacher after leaving St. Joe's, running track, not playing football. It's too small. They'd like to put those labels on you, it was too small. And hey, it's great to sort of get the last laugh, isn't it?
Well, it's awesome because, I mentor kids, and it's one of the greatest gifts that I have is to be able to help another kid figure out and navigate life that based on how their strengths and weaknesses fit into their world. And, coaches and teachers and mentors, we don't give enough credit to the value that they have as far as an impact long term. I mean, you could recite every person that impacted your life, I'm sure, on the coach teacher level, and exactly how they impacted you to this day. And to me, that's a great responsibility and a great honor to have, and one that I enjoy. And I'm sure over the course of your lifetime, you've done that as well. And it's a great segue for me. 1976. Does that ring a bell? That year?
Sort of. When everybody's telling me that I'm too old, I'm now in 1976. I've gone through my second. I've gone through a divorce that was well chronicled in a movie. Yes, that note was left. If you saw Invincible, you'll never go anywhere. You never make a name for yourself. Never make any money. And I use that as a motivator. And I'm teaching at Edinburgh High School, head track coach, assistant football coach. And you talk about being a mentor, and making an impact, Matt. So I'm having all these kids coming up to me. I'm teaching middle school and going up to the high school to coach. And they're all coming to me and they've got issues. They've got some problems. They want somebody to talk to. And they thought I was this young, hip guy. I had the long hair back then. And, as a track, I was actually training for the decathlon and the Olympic trials. And I figured I didn't want to mess them up. So I decided, hey, let's get a master's degree. So I went to Westchester and I was working my master's degree in counseling. And, as luck would have it, or whatever would have it, I got the shot. Coach Dick Vermeil comes in. And that's where my mentors and my coaches, especially George Gorder, came in. And I'm probably going to see him on Wednesday because I'm speaking at Immaculata. Remember Billy Wendell? He used to work for Channel 10 here in Philadelphia, the whip. So he's got a class and I'm going to go talk to their class. Anyway, hey, you can't do it, Vince. You're 30 years old. Hey, you can't do it, Vince. It's never been done before. You're too old. You're too this. You're too that. You're not this. You're not that. And he comes to me and gives me this quote, says, happy are those who dream dreams, willing to pay the price to make their dreams come true. And that's
that many times, man.
Yeah, be willing to pay the price. If Janet were here in the background, she'd say, hey, the dream is free, but the price to be paid is the hustle. You got to pay the hustle. And that's what it is, man. And if you're not willing to pay the price, forget about it because you're just a poser. And so, I got the shot. And then I signed a contract. I signed for $21,000. I signed for $21,000. I got a $2,000 roster bonus. So if I made the team, and when I made the team and I cashed that check, that was the most money I ever had in my hands ever at one time. That $2,000 was 1/3 of my teaching check of my teaching salary. My second year when I was teaching, I was making $5,600, but that was that was like in '68, But hey, it's all good, and Coach comes in and gives me the shot of a lifetime and gives me the opportunity of a lifetime, and was able to flip it, and and then 30 years later comes this sick thing called, where is it, right here? This bad boy, Invincible. I mean, how crazy is that to have a movie made about you? So
let me ask you this. We watched the movie, and you and I have talked many times, and but the movie shows the movie shows Mark Wahlberg playing you, and it's the tryouts and how hard they went at him, and how you never and he played you, showing how every time he got hit, he got back up. Was it as hard and as intense and as much of a struggle emotionally and mentally as it was physically?
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of intimidation going on out there. They were trying to intimidate me physically, mentally, intellectually, and they were going after me pretty hard. And a lot of those hits you just saw in the movie that Mark Wahlberg took were the real hits. I was talking today when I was with the NFL Network guys, and they had one of those really cool cameras, and I said they had that camera within inches of Mark in some of those hits, and so he took all the hits that I was taking back there. He didn't want to back off. That's why he was so great. I mean, I just love Mark for that. But, they were coming at me, Matt, so I just kept my mouth shut and just went right back at them. And they had never, they never experienced a wide receiver before that would throw downfield. And I say throw downfield. We were allowed to block below the waist. And, I was anything that moved. It had a different color. If I was wearing the green jersey on the offense and the whites were the defense, and I just say, listen, if you don't want to get hit, stay out of my way. Just get out of my way. I'm just trying to make the team. I'm not trying to hurt anybody, but the rule says I can block below the waist, and I'm going to block below the waist. But this is the coolest part. training camps at Widener's, you know how it's only 8 miles. It's in Chester's. You know, Widener's only 8 miles from Glen Olden, right down McDade Boulevard. Every practice, as the story started to generate, you know, that I'm looks like I might make the team. I'm starting to make some catches in the preseason games. My students are starting to show up. My dad was always there, and all his buddies from Westinghouse are starting to show up. All the guys I played at Max's, you know, and the Aston Knights and the semi-pro team that I was playing for, there might be 200 or 300 people that came there just to watch me. And every time I catch a pass, I would boom, just like in the movie. I'd sprint to the end zone, and they would, yo, Vince, and they'd be going crazy. And Vermeil would turn around and wonder what's going on. And here I am. I trot back to the huddle. I was going a little bit faster than everybody else because I was a track guy. You know, and there was no way they're going to be able to run me into the ground. I mean, I could go forever. And, and you know what? It was a reverse discrimination. I mean, not reverse discrimination, reverse intimidation. And that they just couldn't beat me physically, nor could they beat me mentally. And I wore them down, and eventually wound up at the end of the preseason. I led the team in receptions and touchdowns in the preseason. I mean, that's not supposed to happen. Yeah, the movie sort of made it look like my skills were diminished, but you know, you got to go Hollywood. You have to, you know, I mean, they mess around a little bit, you know, like with Janet, they made her a Giants fan. Are you kidding me? You know, don't hate me out there, ladies, but there's no way the Giants fan's going to be in my life. You know, we can't have a house divided here. I mean, Janet wasn't an Eagles fan. She went to Penn State, but she wasn't any pro football fan. She wasn't really a football fan because she was a gymnast.
That's awesome, man. I love you know, when you're teaching a kid what work ethic is like and what perseverance is like and what battling and hard work feels like. You know, those are watching that movie, even though I know you, I got engrossed in that feeling of how hard are they going to make you work to get what you want. And the fact you never quit and you never back down was just something that, you know, I personally was in awe of, having seen the movie, and still to this day, it's still one of the coolest stories in the history of sports. As some guy off the bench from you know, Interborough High School takes a walk-on tryout and makes the Philadelphia Eagles.
Hey, man, I didn't do anything you didn't do when you were in basic training in the service. So, you know, don't put me up in a pedestal and tell me I'm somebody special. I've never been through basic training. But you know what it's like when you're there, and anybody out there that's been in the service, anybody out there that's had to go through those kinds of things, you know the games they play. You know, they try to beat you down and strip you down, you know, physically and mentally, and see how strong you are, whether you can survive. You know, and I had never been in the service, and I wouldn't know what it was. I couldn't compare to anything. But the one thing I wasn't going to let them do, I wasn't going to let them beat me, you know, that way. They weren't going to. They might take me out physically, or they might be a better athlete than me, or they might catch the ball better than me. But they're not going to intimidate me, and they're not going to be messing with my head. There's a word for it. It's called minding. Yep. And they're not going to do it. I'm not going to let them do it, man. And it ain't happening. And, you know, but then I got my advocates. I had a couple of coaches. I won't mention the coaches, but, you know, a couple of the coaches were going after me, you know, just wanted to see what it was. But I had these two guys. I had three guys. One was Coach Vermeil. He was my guy. The other guy was Kenny Hyman, who was believe it or not, he was our offensive line coach, centers coach. And the other one was, think it'll come to me, my wide receivers coach. And, you know, between those three guys, they were the ones who were my advocates. So, you know, it worked out okay.
I think it worked out okay.
Yep. I
think it worked out really okay. So you make the team and you play for 3 years for the Eagles. Where did the Who's Nuts t-shirt, that slogan come from?
Where did the Who's Nuts slogan? There is the Who's Nuts. It's right over here. I wish you could see it. It's right there. This is my wall. I've got some great pictures. My jersey, the picture that's in the Hall of Fame, last laugh, and Janet's over there with her USA jersey and her gymnastics stuff. The Who's Nuts. That's Kenny Hyman, and Kenny is whoop. Excuse me. Let's get this back in there. Kenny was the special teams coach, and I used to, and when he played for the who was the Cardinals, they had this thing with them that if you blew a guy up in special teams. And you could Google it up. If you Google me, you'll find a T-shirt there that says, you'll see a picture there with Who's Nuts. And And so if you blew a guy up on special teams and you won the game and made a critical play that made a difference in the game, you got a Who's Nuts T-shirt. And it was all back in the day. That, remember Buddy Ryan, the Bounty Bowl. That was we were talking about that today, the Bounty Bowl, which was so funny. And he put a bounty out on Luis Zendejas. Well, there used to be there was a coach in the NFL to remain unnamed, just to keep his memory in a positive vein. He used to give out TVs. He would give out refrigerators. He'd give out stereos if you take out a quarterback or something like that, So so they couldn't.
Back when football was a man's sport.
Yeah, right. So where this is after leather helmets. And Dick Corey, by the way, was my wide receivers coach. It was just hanging right there on the edge of my tongue. So Kenny came up with this thing called the Who's Nuts. And so it's the T-shirt says Who's Nuts. It's the Eagles logo that's right here. It's sort of similar to this, the Invincible Who's Nuts right here with that. And so this is really cool. We're out in St. Louis and we're playing the Cardinals. And all of a sudden, this guy jumps and the bench, because it's the old baseball stadium, and our bench is out in center field. So this guy jumps over the wall and he says, "Hey, Vinny, we love you, man." And here it was that he was the head of the Who's Nuts International, and he gave me this T-shirt. So that's the Who's Nuts. And I've given it to the coach at the Eagles special teams coach, and Chris Maragos and a couple guys. They all have Who's Nuts T-shirt. Doug, of course, Doug Peterson has a Who's Nuts T-shirt, and I've got a few. I'll make sure you get one, Matt, when I see you at the Maxwell dinner. Absolutely.
I'll tell you, man, that there's so many cool things and I don't know how much of this is public knowledge, the Who's Nuts stories, but I think for the people that are watching on Facebook Live, like, this is the kind of stuff that I want to bring to my show, is to not necessarily talk about Invincible the whole time or anything like that. Anybody can rent the movie, but these stories that you can just tell, this the Who's Nuts, the growing up in Glen Old and all those kind of things. This is the important stuff, the meat and potatoes of who is Vince Papale.
Well, it's the fun part. Yeah, I don't get a chance to talk a lot like this when I get up and speak, because they want that motivational, rah, rah, rah kind of a thing. And I do it with PowerPoint videos. But so it's fun to tell some of these stories, because this is the real story. And I hopefully that y'all out there that are just, it's so cool to see everybody tuning in right now. That there's a piece of me and you, there's a piece of you and me. Just know that when I put that helmet on and when I put those shoulder pads on, I did it for you. I did it for you.
That's the difference, I think, in today's world, is that, 1976 obviously was a different time, but the mentality of the athlete, I think, is also a little bit different. There are some old school guys like Dawkins, guys like that when they strapped on their uniform, they knew they were playing for a city and the people in that city. And I think you were one of the first to ever do that in this town and make it popular. When people would go, I want to get behind Vince Papale. It doesn't matter whether you're the starting wide receiver or the guy that goes down and blows up the wedge on special teams. You were a guy that played with everything you had, and you did it for a purpose, which was the pride of the city. And I love it.
Yeah, well, you had to. You had to give it everything you had. I mean, that's the only way I know how to go. That's the only way I was taught. And when my son Vinny and my daughter Gabriella, our daughter, our son, and I mean, that's the only way to go. I mean, nobody's going to outwork my kids. Nobody's going to outwork my wife. Nobody's going to outwork or out hustle me. And that's part of what we are, and that's this gene that's been ingrained in us from our parents. And I'm trying to get it in my kids and hopefully in their grandchildren, and I'll help around those. Probably by the time they have children, they're going to be changing all kinds of diapers, including mine. But I'm turning 73 in a couple months, man. I mean, this sucks. I got a 22 and a 24-year-old. Everybody thinks of my grandchildren. I said, dude, I'm the Italian stallion.
Well, thank God they have Janet's good looks.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah, and her talent and her brains and everything else. I'm just I don't know. I'm the guy that just confirms the DNA test. Yes, they are mine. We've done.
I love how you and Janet. I mean, Janet is amazing. And
no,
for those of you that don't know Janet, Janet is she's an amazing person. She's a real estate tycoon. She's constantly selling real estate.
There's a great picture of Janet. And I don't know if you can see that. But
you're on a cruise there.
Yeah, we were on one of the river boats down at the right down there. And I mean, she makes me look like I'm in a coma. She's got so much energy. She does. Well, we've been, I mean, you've been around us for 20
Yeah.
years, for crying out loud, at Maxwell. I mean, it's pretty cool. So, but she's doing very well in real estate. We've written a book together, by the way. This one here, Be Invincible. Oh, there's that USA jersey I was telling you about. There's a glare.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Yep.
See it in the background? There it is.
Yep.
And that's USA jersey over to my left. And Janet and I wrote this book because she coached at the University of Pennsylvania. It's called Be Invincible, a playbook for reaching your full potential. And Coach Ramil, he always says one of the greatest wastes of mankind is a waste of potential. And Janet and I went with that. So, we said it's a playbook for reaching your full potential. But Janet's coached gymnastics all over the world. She started the University of Penn's gymnastics program and had to leave it after 13 years, starting in '76, because of she got asthma because there was asbestos in the gym there. But she's phenomenal. So we have this thing, and we talk all the time when I get out and speak, and a lot of the stuff that I developed is because of her, and she likes to think she's my life coach. Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Well, you guys make a great team, and that's something that.
What's all about teamwork, man? Teamwork makes the dream work, Matt. You know that.
Absolutely. So now,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I'm just going to say, I had the distinct honor of speaking to SEAL Team 6 a couple of years ago.
Wow.
That was pretty frightening. And I mean, those guys are great, and I talk about teamwork makes the dream work. And I have a picture, the boats that they have when they have to crash through the waves and go out, and each one has the oar, and every one that has that oar, everybody has a purpose. And whatever your role is that has that oar, whether you're the lead guy, the back person, whether you're the flank, whatever it might be, and you know this from service. But you have to understand what your role is and play your role out with passion. And if you don't do that, then the team's going nowhere. And that's how that dream comes true, because when you have that team together and you surround yourself with good people that believe in you, teamwork makes the dream work. And that's the metaphor that I use when I talk. I'll use it tomorrow when I'm talking to people from all over the world that are coming into Philadelphia. They want to know what it's like to be in Philly. So, it's pretty cool. Sorry to interrupt, but that, it's all about.
I'm glad you did. That was phenomenal.
Man. Yeah, we say that, and people say, what motivates you? What drives you? Well, it's my team. It's the Papale team. We don't call it the Invincible. We are just the Papale team. And Gabby, Vinny, and Janet, it's all about them. And whatever else is in the periphery. And, I do it for them. So. Hey.
That's amazing, man. I love your passion for your family, and I love that it's public on social media, and that you posted pictures at tailgating at Vinny's football games, and when Gabby was cheering for Syracuse, you were at Syracuse games and doing all that. So I love how involved you are with your kids, and that's something that the Maxwell family. And for people that don't know what the Maxwell is, we've referenced it a couple times. The Maxwell Football Club is the oldest football club in America. It's based out of Philadelphia. I've been associated with it since 1995. I was the security director for quite a number of years, and Vince has been part of it forever. And Ron Jaworski was the president for a very long time. He recently stepped down a couple of years ago. So it's an amazing group of people who are promoting football at all levels, from high school through pro. And Mark Wahlberg, who is the executive director, runs a great organization. And we've had the pleasure of being around a lot of amazing human beings. Tim Tebow, as you can see on the wall behind me, numerous times. It's the list is long and prestigious, and I honestly believe that it's a more valuable award than the one up in New York, the Heisman. But that's an argument for another day. But
we honor. You honor excellence in not just athletics, but also in academics, and what you do what you do out in the community, and it's the trifecta. And it's not just about who has the highest throwing percentage and scores the most yardage and all this. I mean, scores the most touchdowns, has the most yardage. It's about character, man, and that's one of the things that we need to stress with people: character.
Yeah, consistency, character, and commitment, man. Those are the three C's I live by. So let's move on a little bit here. So now you've retired from football, and you go out into the world and you start working again as Vince Papale, former Eagle. What was that like between '79 and say the early 2000s?
I
What were
struggled.
you doing mostly?
I struggled. I was having a tough time with it. I had a nice broadcasting career set up. I thought that was going to go somewhere. It didn't quite get to where it got for whatever reason, not to be mentioned, but it didn't happen. And some was my fault. Other was controlled by other people, and and some of it I think was because of jealousy, because they were pissed off that here's this guy without any TV experience that is now on the number one TV network. Back then I was working for Channel 10 on the weekends. We were number one, Mike, number one. And I had a pretty good reputation as a sports person. And then just, something happened, didn't work out. And then from that, I got into sales and marketing. And it's just, it was there. I was doing very well, but there was just something lacking. And then eventually, I met Janet. I mean, I don't know where I was on a roller coaster. And then I met Janet back in '93. 10 years, 12 years after. I wasn't, like totally struggling, but, I was still trying to find myself. And here I'm, 40 something years old and, grow up, Vince, get it straightened out. And then we got together and we collaborated and said, we're going to work together as a team. And then starting then, I got into the mortgage business and flourished. And I just followed this one guy by the name of Tim Fitzpatrick, who was with Sally Mae. I became a director with Sally Mae, and I did some stuff with Frito-Lay. But I was following Tim, and then eventually, it all hit the wall, man, when the movie came out, in 2006. And now it's just taken it to another level like you can't even imagine. And that whole project was starting in 2002. So my whole life has changed. But I'll be the first to say, if it weren't for Janet, I don't know where I'd be, what I'd be doing right now. She saved my life several times. One, by forcing me to get a colonoscopy, and they found cancer. But I wouldn't be here talking to you if I didn't take that test. Because if I waited 3 or 4 weeks, the cancer would have gotten through my colon wall and into my. Forget about it. I'm done. And
Let's
I got babies for kids. Yeah.
Let's talk about cancer. Because I mean, everybody that's watching right now has somebody that they know that has had that disease. And my mom's had it twice, and my wife's sister passed a few years back from it, and it affects everybody. Tell us your journey, and I know that it's been chronicled on Jefferson Hospitals, put a lot of commercials out and stuff like that with you. Tell us about your cancer journey.
Well, it was around 2001, and I just I was, I don't know, 55 or something like that, and Janet says, it's about time you take this test. And I always kid. She said she was threatening to trade me in for a couple of 30-year-olds unless I took a colonoscopy, So I went and I took it, and bam, when you know it, they found that polyp, and that polyp was encapsulated. And we'll get the microphone back. Sorry about that. And so the polyp was encapsulated, and they took it out, and you find out you got the big C. The doctor says, I got some good news and I got some bad news. Oh, so are you sitting down? Oh, this isn't good. And and then I get the word that I had cancer, and then they say, oh, and go see your family doctor. I don't want to see a family doctor about cancer. I want to see an oncologist, for crying out loud. So at any rate, with Jeff, and I got an advocate. We always talk about advocates, and my friend Tony Infanolino, who's at Jefferson Hospital. Thank you, Tony. Gastroenterology, and he was my neighbor, and he became my advocate, and he took this specimen and sent it around, and he says you're fine. It's totally trapped in there. No cells got out, but we just want to make sure. And they wanted to they did a resectioning. So on June 21st of 2001, they resectioned 18 inches of my colon, took it right through my navel. It was done laparoscopically, and no blood transfusion or anything. The first person to call me after it was done, Coach Ramil. I don't know what I said. Yeah,
one of your mentors, man.
Yeah, my guy. I'm going to be with Coach and Jaws are coming to Vinny's game on Saturday. I mean, I love the guy. They're my guys. Like, he calls me, and I don't remember anything he said. He said, "Do I need to be there? Can I bring anything?" I said, "Yeah, bring me a beer." Yeah. And Janet says that was pretty funny because I was all whacked out with the painkillers. But and in 3 days I'm out of the hospital, and I never looked back. No chemo, no radiation.
Wow.
And then for 3 or 4 years, I became a spokesperson for Jeff. I do a lot of colon rectal cancer awareness. I'm doing a big event out in Des Moines, Iowa in January. I've been all over the country. received awards for cancer awareness and going and helping people. And not to tell you, Matt, the greatest feeling, somebody comes up to me and said, we heard that you had cancer. We didn't even think about getting the colonoscopy. They took it, we found it. And because of it, we found it stage 1, stage 2, and we're alive. And they say the reason they're alive is because I'm the guy to convince them to do it. And then he just, oh, are you kidding me? Not really, it wasn't me, but so here it is. And Invincible is giving me that platform to take it now to that next level, and speak about it. And I have fun with it. And it is what it is. It's something that, hey, it happened. And I'm almost now to the point where I'm proud that I did have it, because now I can save some lives, and we're not afraid to talk about it. And then the kids know about it, that, it's all good. So
I think part of life, I've been through struggles, and I think everybody's been through struggles and loss, and my brother died when I was 18, and
right.
So everybody's got these hurdles they've got to get past, and some people do better than others at getting past them. And I think one of the most inspiring parts of your story, Vince, and it is my job to bestow accolades towards you at this moment as the show's host. So I just let me have this for a moment. I know you don't like it that much, but the best part about hearing somebody's story, and that's what I love about being a podcast host, is being able to share somebody's story, is when you see how they overcame the hurdles and the struggles in their life. And what I'm hearing from you, and now granted you've had your struggles and you admitted that you had your struggles, but how you came out of those struggles, and the effort and intensity and not being outworked, and knowing that you've got cancer, and how do you handle that, and how do you go past that, and how do you come out of that, and how do you as a family come through that. And I think it's just it's a testament to you and your marriage, and your ability to be a strong person to handle that.
Thanks. Hey, listen, I'm no hero. I was scared blankless, and God, you hear you got the C word, and then you start feeling sorry for yourself. And Gabriella's, 7 or 6, and Vinny's 3, and you're thinking, oh my God, it's just the last time I'm going to see my kids. And you know what my buddy did, Tony in Fandolino, the hot dog they call him. You know what he said, go on a trip. And Janet and I, a couple of weeks before that I had found out that I had cancer, went to Dick Vermeil's golf tournament, and we bid on a trip to to Jamaica, just for us, so we could have a getaway. And when I found out we had cancer, we took the kids with us. And it was one of the greatest, but I'm looking at every beautiful sunset. Is this the last sunset I'm going to see with my children? And it was pretty sobering. And then I came right back, and I'll never forget it, June 21st, 2001. I had the surgery. And 2 days after I took all the tubes out, and all those ridiculous things, the hallway in Jefferson, in that floor, in the 11th floor of Jeff, was 175 tiles. And each tile was 1 foot. So it was X amount of yards. And I just converted it into a football field. And I just started like I was in training camp. If I could get through a Dick Vermeil training camp, I can get through this. And I just started walking the hallway to the point where the nurses' stations, they're all counting, and they couldn't believe it, that after it was all said and done, within two or 3 days after my surgery, I had walked 3 miles in the hallway based upon their calculation. Because I hadn't, it was done laparoscopically. The pain was all of a sudden gone. I was off the painkillers. And eventually they said, you're supposed to be here for 10 days. Get out of here. You're okay. Get out. And then, I was fine, and then became a spokesperson, and, saw my kids. They didn't even know that I was going in surgery for that. They thought it was something else. But, it's all good. Good stuff. There's some great pictures of the family in Google.
I'm glad to hear that you've been cancer-free since then as well. And
well, you got tested, So I always say you never know what they find when they take that test. I said the last time they found my father's shoe up there. So Coach Vermeil says, you stole that from me. That's my joke.
That's Coach Vermeil's joke. Yeah,
that's what he said. So
let's transition with something a little bit less serious, but I thought it was very important that we talked about that. So the movies. You find out the screenplay, your life story becomes a movie, and Disney decides they want to pick it up and make a movie about it. First reaction, go. What was your first reaction?
Primal, scream. You kidding me? Get the call from Disney. Who's your agent? I mean, just like that, bang, bang, bang. I was with Gabby and Vinny. I was heading to the bank, and the cell phone rang, and I answered it, and they said, "This is Walt Disney Productions," blah, 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 blah. And I, wow. And they said, "What's happening?" I says, "We're Disney characters. We're Disney characters. We're going to Disneyland." And then it just, and it, the whole thing, the whole process from the screenplay to the, I should have worn the other headsets that have clips on them, from the screenplay to the, the guy who took the risk, Ken Mock, who's featured in my book. He was a creator of America's Next Top Model. He has a spec script written by Brad Gann, and they all did this on spec. And then one day in 2004, they took like 8 different guys, producers, took the script to 8 different studios in Hollywood. One Paramount, Sony, New Line, whatever it is, Universal, and the Warner Brothers, the big guys, and they're all bidding on it. I mean, they were interested in it. And then Disney outbid everybody, and that's how he became the property of Disney in 2004 of October. And then Mark Wahlberg comes into my life, Elizabeth Banks, Greg Kinnear. It's just like you can't even imagine. It was like rapid fire. And then the production of the movie in 2005. We trained at Northeast High School 2 weeks before July 4th in 2005 when we were filming the movie, just to choreograph all the football scenes. And all the football players were Arena Football League players, Matt, or former NFL players. And what was really cool that they did is that Greg Ellis, who was in charge of the second unit, who also did Replacements, he did Rookie, he did Miracle. I mean, he does all those big football movies and sports movies. Greg had a free agent tryout, and he picked 3 guys from that tryout to be in the movie, which I thought was so badass. That was so cool that he did that.
Just like
and he brought me up on stage, and there were 500 guys there. We were up at the Hilton up there on Route 1, and we had this big meeting, and there's Greg, and I'm in the background watching this whole thing unfold. It was like surreal. And he did the same thing. He says, "We're going to give 3 guys a shot to be in that movie, to be a Vince Papale." And it was so cool. And, it comes out in 06, right around Labor Day. People still tell me stories about the weather was lousy. It was real crappy. I was in Ocean City, and I was down there. Everybody's watching the movie. We all have our Eagles jerseys on. And, man, when you made that hit at the end, everybody's screaming and yelling, screaming the Eagle chant. And it was like, wow, so cool. And ran #1 in the box office for 2 weeks. But you know what the best thing is still? It's the impact, man. We were talking about that, Matt, right from the beginning. That it gives me that platform to show people, look at me. If I can do it, anybody can do it, because it's the greatest thing in the world, and I'm still doing this. So it's
but just
good,
imagine,
man.
Mark Wahlberg,
my buddy,
played you.
My buddy. I mean, we text all the time. I talk. What he did the other day, like my daughter found this picture of Mark. And he used to go around. He used to go around the set all the time in a Vespa scooter, and he got it painted green. He had it painted, put 83 on it, put the Eagles wings and the whole thing. And my kids were always in the back of the scooter. So just the other day, Gabriella says, "Dad, look at this picture I found." And there was this picture of her there, and she had this flip phone on it. She says, "Look at me trying to be so cool in this flip phone." I think she was like 11, and so she sent it. I said, "You got to send it to Mark." She texted it to Mark. Mark Instagrams it. So then Vinny's on his way to a football game. He's on his way up to, we're heading to New Hampshire for the New Hampshire game a couple of weeks ago. And he, whatever game, Albany, he's heading up to Albany. And he had listened to a podcast where Mark was talking about his new movie, and he was talking about Invincible. So he texted Mark on the road trip and says, "Hey man, I listened to the podcast. It was really cool. Just wanted to say hi." 2 minutes later, on the trip up there, he's being FaceTimed by Mark Wahlberg. And Mark, "Hey man, let's get together. We can't wait to see you." Vinny was this big. That scene in the movie where the little boy number 83 runs in front of the car, that's Vinny. Yeah. That's my 6'2", 205-pound wide receiver. And Gabriella, the one that works for the 76ers, a cheerleader from Syracuse, she was the quarterback. She's the one that threw the ball in the streets to try to get him wiped out. I was kidding for that. But it's like you can't. It's so surreal. But it won't go away. And I'm getting, like, my phone was blowing up the other day because he's out promoting his new movie, Instant Parents. And all he talks about is Invincible, and it's like the coolest thing ever. And we feel like we're part of his family, and I know that he was impacted by us and our family, how tight we are and the team that we are. And it's just the coolest experience in the world. But it had its shortcomings because our kids had to live as Invincible's kids. And it wasn't easy for them, especially from Vincent's perspective, being the athlete. Oh, you think you're invincible. The only reason you got here is because you're old man. And Gabby had to go through the same thing. They're now secure and they're cool with it. And they got over that hurdle. And they know that the reason they got to where they got is because they got their mother's genes, not mine. So, it's all good.
Well, that's, I'm still, as an average normal guy, I think, okay, if for whatever reason my life is that impactful that somebody decided they would write a movie about it. I wrote a book about my brother and me and my life growing up, and I sent it to a couple of movie houses who said it would be a great Lifetime Hallmark kind of TV movie, and I always thought who would play me, and that's in my head I'm like, all right, who would be young Matt and teenage idiot Matt and adult Matt with no hair? And of course, bald Bruce Willis would be playing me right now. That's kind of what I decided. But Mark Wahlberg, he's that guy that transcends. He can play just about every role. And I never would have thought he would be a comedian. But when he was in The Other Guys with Will Ferrell, I think that was his first real comedy. He was brilliant. And so I like him more now than I did before, because he can be the guy from Invincible or The Shooter or one of those other movies, and also be, in the comedies, the dad comedies that he's in now. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah. He's pretty cool, and everybody in the neighborhood, they were busmates. Said Danny DeVito would play me. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and I was thinking maybe it'd be Hugh Jackman. Bradley Cooper was just starting, back then, but he was the right age. He was 30, when the movie was coming out. Would have been perfect. And he's a great athlete, Bradley is a big Eagles fan. But hey, you know what? It's Mark and anybody big, well, he's not as tall as us. I don't care about how tall Mark Wahlberg is. He's my buddy, man, and I can't imagine anybody else but Mark Wahlberg playing, because he keeps it alive. He's so hot right now. He just keeps it alive, and he's proud of it. And I'm proud to say that he's a friend, and very proud to say he's part of our family. Janet and I and Gabrielle and Vincent love him to death. He's a brother, and we just think he's the best.
All right, now over your right shoulder. I'm guessing your right shoulder.
All right, my right shoulder. Yeah, what's over here? I got a couple books.
And last laugh. Let's bring that out.
Isn't that cool?
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the book that you just wrote with your best friend, Dennis Franks.
All right. How much time do I have here? I don't even know what time.
We got 13 minutes, brother. We got plenty of time.
We do? We killed all that time already?
Oh, yeah. This is what conversations do. It's like we're at a bar. Only this is in vodka.
Yeah, well, we don't have it right here in front of me. The Last Laugh. So this book, Dennis and I, there was the last scene in the movie is what they call composite, and there's composite characters. Like if you see Mark when he's in the movie about the bombings up in Boston, and he plays a law enforcement guy. The character that he plays is a composite. It's a couple characters molded and melded into one. The guys in our movie, Johnny, Billy, and Petey, I won't mention their names, but they were real people. But they were sort of composites, of a conglomeration, of a melding of different people. Anybody that sees me throwing these waters over here, I'm not throwing them on the ground. I actually have a little container down there, and I'm playing a little basketball there. So just for the record. So that last scene is a composite scene, but it's of a play that really did happen. And it happened twice. One was the Redskins and one was against the Giants. And I made a similar kind of a hit against the Redskins when they were coming undefeated. And it was toward the end of the game. An audible had to be called. And I made the hit. And then Dennis Franks recovered the fumble. And it was all because of the white knuckle thing. I read the guy's knuckles. I made the audible, check zero. And then everybody slid right, enabled me to come up underneath and just get the free release. Made the hit. And there's a picture in the Pro Football Hall of Fame called The Last Laugh. I don't know if you can see it up there. I'm gonna go right over there. I don't know if you can see
there it is.
Yeah, there it is. This picture right here. That picture is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. All right, and
awesome.
you know, working around, as you can see, who's nuts is down there.
Very
But
nice.
anyway, so that picture is in the Hall of Fame, and that picture was snapped on the sideline, and it won an award. And back then it's 76, and ironically, it's right over Jackie Smith dropping a touchdown pass when Jackie was with the Dallas Cowboys. So you're talking about
Hate the
getting
Cowboys.
you know, especially after last night.
Oh, good
Oh, that
God.
was, you know. So anyway, Dennis and I have always been messing around and saying we've you know, the great thing is 40 years, our friendship has been stronger than ever. So we decided to write a book called The Last Laugh from Vision to Victory. So we came up with a code called the Victor's Code. We would tell our story through what we called the Victor's Code that we sort of lived by back then, but we didn't sort of categorize it. So we came up Vision to Victory, and I have them in front of me here. It's vision, valor, vehemence, veracity, vitality, vigor, and victory. And the vision's the state of being able to see. Valor is exceptional courage. Vehemence is great energy or passion. Veracity, speaking the truth. We need to have that anymore. Living a healthy lifestyle is vitality. Vigor is the ability to thrive and survive in the face of obstacles. And accomplishments, aim at purpose is getting to the finish line is victory. And so what we did is we decided to show our story through the code. And then we presented our code, and I'm scrolling up because I don't want to mess up here. We presented our code to a bunch of people we call our Hall of Famers, you know, and they bought into the code, Matt, and they decided to tell their success stories through the code. So we got Mark Wahlberg and Carl Peterson. They wrote the forward. Pat Croce, we all know Pat, right? I mean, an icon of Philadelphia. He looked at the code. He loved it. Bo Eason, former NFL player, San Francisco 49er. Now he's a playwright. Bo Eason, Cos Venicola. You know Cos. Cos owns the
Cosmo's man.
Yeah, Cosmo, you know, and he's a great businessman, an entrepreneur. Cos tells his story. Jim Harbaugh, right? Coach of Michigan. Then he went to Michigan. So he did. Mariel Hemingway, you know,
Wow.
problems in her family with drugs and, you know, suicide. Yeah. And she's Haley Lee, who's the wife of our executive producer for the movie, but she's also a North Korean American, and she came over and became a U.S. citizen. But before she came over, she helped her grandparents get out of North Korea. I mean, it's an unbelievable story. Ken Mock, who was our executive producer, so he tells his story through that. Heather Mitz-Feely, you know, AJ. So she tells her story. J.R. Reidinger, he's a multimillionaire, trillionaire, a billionaire entrepreneur. And Brian Rutenberg is an award-winning painter, and then Coach Ramil. So they're our Hall of Famers, and they tell the story through the code. And, you know, it's just brilliant that they would not only endorse it, but they would validate it. It validated us. So the book's out. We just did it. We just pitched the book like you're doing with Ted. As I said at the beginning of the podcast, we pitched it to 45 or 50 people around the country for some of the major shows. And we got a lot of great response. And I think I'll let you know, and I'll let anybody else know. You go to my website or vincepapale.com or whatever, and you'll let you know what's going to go. We're going to national with this thing, and hopefully it'll be a bestseller. We've already got 18,000 copies sold, and we haven't really promoted it. And, you know, you can easily, it's Amazon.com or shop.com, and just look for Last Laugh, Vision to Victory, and you can get it.
I'm going to put a link to it in the comments of this thread for the Facebook Live, and then I'm also going to put a separate post linking to it as well.
But it was cool. It's a great project, you know, and it took us about 6 months to do it, and it was a dream of ours. And, you know, and once you get to that victory, to us it was a victory, and now we find something else. So we're thinking maybe we'll come out with another book. Maybe we'll go on stage and speak a little bit, but we want to get the story out, you know, and help people. It's sort of a self-help kind of a thing, but it's fun. You know, there's some great stories, tremendous pictures, and, you know, some of the good stuff and the fun things we did together.
It's fun to, you know, my best friend, his name's Toby Thorpe. He was my roommate in the Army, and I'm hoping he was listening tonight or is listening right now. He lives out in Missouri, kind of like you and Dennis. We've been best friends for 29 years. And, you know, when you can do things together as friends, you know, I've been fortunate enough as a security guy, as a bodyguard, to work with some famous athletes, and most notably Tim Tebow is his guy. And several times I was able to bring some people in from my world, my personal world, into that world, and Toby lived in Denver for a while, outside of Denver when Tim was playing there. So I was able to bring Tim to Toby, and Toby went to a game, and we had field passes and sat in a box suite and went to Tim's house after the game and hung out with Tim at his house. So, I mean, it was like the Make-A-Wish day for my best friend. So I was able to share that with him. And it's when you can have that connection with someone that you care about and love, like you do with Dennis, and you can share in a victory like that. And I just think it's cool. And I think more people need to be spending more time with the ones that they care about and the ones that they love, and sharing in those moments, because you don't know what tomorrow brings. Well,
we talk about this Invincible and its invincibility, and obviously it's a great brand and it's a major part of what we're doing with that. And, we talk about what is it? And it's just that synergy of mind, body, and spirit. That's what the code is. And I talked about that earlier, when they were trying to break me down and do whatever they could to intimidate me at training camp when I first got in there. There was a bunch of kids, and then the veterans came in. I almost let it happen. And Coach pulled me in, and he said, "What's going on?" He says, "You're not the same guy you were." I said, "Well, these guys are my heroes, and I don't want to hurt them." He said, "They're your heroes, or a bunch of bums." Basically, he didn't say that word, but he said, 2-10, or they were playing 14 games, 2-12, 4-10. Are you kidding me? They're your heroes? Come on, man. He says, "You got a couple of weeks to get your head out of your butt." And he says, "I want to see the same Vince Papale I saw last week, or you're gone." And I mean, like that, stern.
Right.
And "Oh, okay, Coach." I said, "You mean I got a shot?" He says, "You have a shot." And, he always said, "If you don't want to know what the answer is, don't ask me a question." And but I had to ask that question. I said, "You mean I really have a shot here?" I'm not, because we had like 15 wide receivers in line. There was over 100 people in that training camp. They were giving guys $100 a week to come to training camp.
Wow.
We thought we were, we died and went to heaven with $100 cash. Yeah, free meals. Back then you get a bud for 75 cents.
Can't get that anymore.
No, sir.
So, Vince, I just want to first of all say thank you for doing this. I know you had a busy day. You talked a lot. You did a bunch of interviews. But as your friend and as somebody who admires you, I just want to say thank you for taking the time tonight.
Thank you.
I know everybody that watched this tonight, we consistently kept viewers throughout this entire hour, which is a testament to just the way that the conversation flowed. What's your website again? So everybody knows.
VincePapale.com. Yeah, www.vincepapale.com. It's under construction right now. It's a little outdated. We're outdating it, but it's all good. And you can go to DennisFranks.com, same thing, or LastLaugh.com. But the book, just Amazon.com, Vision of Victory. That'll take you right there. And hey, listen, whatever, and if you didn't get anything out of this message tonight, is don't let people tell you can't do it. Just, just you do it. Just be willing to pay the price. Be passionate. You can do it.
Yeah, I think that's a great message. I tell kids all the time, when you can find your passion and your purpose and do them at the same time, you're going to find success. And
be kind. We need kindness right now. All the stuff that's going on, I'm tired of this left and right stuff. Just let's come right down to the middle and be nice to everybody. And come on, man, this is ridiculous. This is the greatest country in the world. Don't antagonize the other person. Let's work it out. Get together. Let's come to a compromise. We can make this happen. And you're the ones out there, you listeners, you viewers, you're the ones who can make it happen. So take it upon yourself to make a difference.
Absolutely. Vince, thank you so much.
You're welcome,
Stay on the line here. Don't hang up yet. I'm going to end the broadcast here in a second. Guys, everybody on Facebook land, thank you so much for tuning in to the second episode of the 2 Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. This will be available tonight on the audio. I'll be uploading it tonight. So if you're listening to the podcast, you go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen. And thank you again. Next week, I have another great guest. I'll be announcing that tomorrow. And I look forward to seeing you all again in a week. For Vince Papale, I'm Matt Cubbler. God bless. Take care. And for God's sakes, be kind.
Thank you.